In today's fast paced and competitive workplaces, it's not your IQ, but your EQ, your emotional intelligence, that sets you apart. You can be the smartest person in the room, but without the ability to manage emotions, yours and others, you'll struggle to lead, collaborate, or resolve conflicts effectively. Let's be real, workplaces can get so intense. Maybe it's a heated meeting where emotions are running wild, or you're dealing with a colleague who constantly tests your patience. These moments aren't just about what you do, but how you manage yourself and the emotions in the room. Hey there, and welcome to another episode of Life Lemons and Lemonades. I'm your host, DJ, and if this is your first time here, I'm so glad you've tuned in. Today, we're talking about emotional intelligence, but not just the surface level stuff you've heard before. We're going to dig a little deeper into the skills that actually help you handle those "what do I do now" moments at work. You've probably heard that emotional intelligence, EQ, is important, right? But what does that really mean? And more importantly, how do we actually use it in our day-to-day lives, especially at work? That's what we're going to figure out together today. Before we dive in, let me share something interesting I found while prepping for this episode. Talent Smart, one of the top organizations that studies emotional intelligence, did a massive study on EQ. They found that it's responsible for 58% of professional success. Think about that for a second. More than half of what makes someone successful isn't their skills, knowledge, or even their experience. It's how well they manage emotions, build relationships, and navigate tricky situations. And honestly, doesn't that just make sense? You can be the smartest person in the room, but if you lose it under pressure or can't connect with your team, it's tough to lead, right? So let me paint a picture for you. You're in a meeting and it's one of those meetings, that kind. Everyone's emotions are high, voices are raised, and you're sitting there trying to figure out how to keep the whole thing from blowing up. Or maybe it's a quieter situation. A colleague keeps interrupting you, dismissing your ideas with this tone that just rub you the wrong way. You want to call them out, but you're worried about sounding rude. Sound familiar, right? I've been there too. These situations happen all the time, and without emotional intelligence, they can leave you feeling frustrated, stuck, or even burned out. But what is emotional intelligence anyway? So, to put it simply, it's the ability to recognize, understand, and manage your own emotions, and to recognize and influence the emotions of others. Why is this such a big deal? Well, on a personal level, of course, it helps you stay calm, handle stress, and communicate better. But professionally, it's a total game changer. It helps you lead with empathy, build stronger teams, and handle conflicts without everything falling apart. I do have a quick question for you. Do you think emotional intelligence is something you are born with, or can it be learned? So, just a spoiler alert, it's absolutely something you can learn and get better at. And today, we're going to dive into the advanced emotional intelligence techniques to help you, and of course, me too. So, for today's episode, we will tackle about staying calm and collected in a high-stakes situations, picking up on nonverbal cues because actions really do speak louder than words, and handling workplace conflicts in a way that doesn't drain your energy or your sanity. And by the end of this episode, I want you to feel like you've got some real actionable tools to bring more calm and connection into your work life. Now, just a quick disclaimer before we go further. The insights I'm sharing today come from a mix of my personal experiences, research, and wisdom from some great minds in this field. So, while these perspectives are my own, they're definitely shaped by the work of many others, and I'll make sure to give credit where it's due. Also, emotional intelligence is a journey. It's not a one time fix. So, think of these tips as stepping stones. Take what works for you and adapt it to your own style. Alright, now that we've got the basics covered, let's get into the good stuff. How to actually use emotional intelligence when it matters most. And let's be honest, one of the most challenging times to stay emotionally intelligent is in high stakes situations. Maybe it's a meeting where the tension is so thick you could cut it with a knife, or maybe it's that last minute deadline where everyone's on edge and you can feel the stress radiating off your team. These moments test us, but this is also where emotional intelligence can make all the difference. So let's dive into the first segment, and that's regulating emotions in high stakes situations. Let me ask you this. How do you usually react under pressure? Do you get quiet and try to avoid conflict, or do you feel your emotions bubbling up and before you know it, you're saying things you wish you had not? High pressure situations trigger something in us called amygdala hijack. It's a term coined by Dr. Daniel Goleman in his groundbreaking book, Emotional Intelligence. And here's how it works. The amygdala, the emotional part of your brain, it processes emotions and perceives threats. When something feels overwhelming, like a heated meeting or unexpected criticism, it takes over and sends you into fight, flight, or freeze mode. Your heart races, your palms sweat, and before you realize it, logical thinking, it's pretty much out the window. The thing is, the amygdala is doing its job. Yes, it's trying to protect you from what it perceives as dangers. But in modern day workplaces, these threats aren't life or death. They're meetings, deadlines, or conversations. But our brain doesn't know the difference, so it reacts the same way as if we are in real danger. It's literally how we are wired. However, these emotional reactions can work against you, making you say or do things you'd regret later. I'll be honest with you, there's a time that this totally happened to me. I was in a meeting where that felt more like an ambush and the tone felt more like an interrogation than a discussion. I could tell there had been conversations before I even walked in. And as someone who deals with anxiety, that immediately put me on edge. Before I knew it, my heart was racing, my face getting hot, and my thoughts were spiraling. And then it happened. Tears started falling. Not the kind you can discreetly wipe away, but that kind where everyone's staring at you. And I knew I was about to either snap or shut down completely. I was defending myself, trying to explain my side, but I felt like my words weren't landing. And then one colleague gave me that smile and that stare that I interpreted that time as sarcasm. And she said, DJ, you're unstable right now. Your emotions are unstable. And in that moment, I felt so small, like humiliated. And if I'm honest, I was angry. But here's the thing. I've since learned that such reaction was normal. Research by psychologists like Susan David, who studies emotional agility, shows that emotions are data, and that's true. They tell us something about what's happening internally, and my reaction was my body's way of saying, that situation feels unsafe for me, and that's valid. But looking back, of course, I realized what I needed was not to prove I was right. I needed to regulate my emotions so I could respond, not react to what was happening. Now, here's the thing. The situations, Now, here's the thing, situations like that don't go away. Workplaces are stressful, people, and emotions will get triggered. But the way you handle it can make all the difference. Not to suppress your feelings, but to navigate them more effectively. So I have here the three simple tools I've learned to help regulate emotions along the way. Number one is pause and breathe. This one's classic for a reason. When you feel that heat rising, take 3 deep breaths. Science showed that deep breathing calms our nervous system and helps you think more clearly. So here's how we do it. So take 3 deep breaths, inhale for 4 counts, hold your breath for 4 counts, and exhale for 6. It's a small action that makes a big difference. That's actually one of the grounding techniques I still apply whenever I need it. And speaking of grounding, the second tool is ground yourself. When your emotions are overwhelming, grounding yourself physically helps to get out of your head and back into your body. So this is how you do it. Feel your feet pressing into the floor or place your hands on a table and focus on that sensation. This simple trick reminds you that you're here, you're safe, and you're in control even when your brain says otherwise. Third is label your emotion. This one feels counterintuitive, but it works. When you're in the middle of an emotional moment, pause and name what you're feeling. For example, I'm frustrated, or I'm overwhelmed, or I'm challenged. Psychologists call this as affect labeling. Research shows that labeling your emotions helps your brain process them, which reduces their intensity. It's like putting a spotlight on the problem so you can handle it. And why do these small practices matter? Because emotional regulation isn't about suppressing what you feel. It's about giving yourself space to choose your response. And let's normalize this. Emotions aren't bad or unprofessional. They are part of being human. What makes emotional intelligence powerful is that it gives you tools to respond to those emotions in ways that align with your values and goals. Now that we've talked about regulating emotions, let's take it a step further because emotions aren't just about what you feel, they're also about what you see. Decoding nonverbal cues is a crucial part of emotional intelligence, and that's exactly what we're diving into next segment. Have you ever been in a meeting when someone said, "That's a great idea," but their crossed arms, their eyebrows, and sigh said something entirely different? Or maybe you've shared your perspective and the room just went quiet with people exchanging glances, and then that made you question everything you just said. Nonverbal cues are everywhere, and if you're not paying attention to them, you're missing half the conversation. Emotional intelligence isn't just about managing your own emotions, it's also about understanding the emotions of others. And to do that, you need to listen with more than just your ears. So, why do nonverbal cues matter so much? Studies show that up to 93% of communication is nonverbal, and that means there's a whole conversation happening beyond the words you hear. According to Dr. Albert Mirabian's research on communication, found that words only account for 7% of a message. Tone accounts for 38%, and body language makes up 55%. Now, that doesn't mean words aren't important. They absolutely are. But it does mean that if you're only focusing on what someone says and ignoring how they say it, you're probably not getting the full picture. So let's talk about how you can start picking up on these silent signals. And I have here 3 simple but powerful ways to decode nonverbal cues. First is observe micro expressions. A lot of emotions live in our faces. Happiness, frustration, concern, they all show up in micro expressions. These are the quick, involuntary movements that flash across someone's face before they control it. As mentioned, they happen so quickly, and if you're not paying attention, you'll probably miss it. For example, if a colleague's smile fades for a split second after hearing your idea, it's a sign that they might not fully agree. So watch closely because faces tell stories words don't. You can start by observing people during conversations. Watch for those quick flashes of emotions like a brief smile, raised eyebrows, or a frown that disappears quickly. And over time, you'll get better at picking up on these subtle cues. Second is pay attention to the body language. Body language often speaks louder than words. Are they leaning in or pulling back? Are their arms crossed or are they gesturing openly? These moments can tell you if someone is engaged, defensive, or disconnected. So, for example, if a team member leans back during a discussion and crosses their arms, it could signal resistance or doubts or questions. And on the other hand, someone leaning forward and nodding is likely more engaged and interested. So, how do we practice this? Next time you're in a meeting, don't just listen. You also have to watch. Look for open postures like uncrossed arms and leaning forward versus the closed ones like turning away or fidgeting. The more you observe, the better you'll understand the emotions behind the actions. Third is listen to the tone of voice. The way something is said often carries more meaning than the words themselves. Is their tone warm and enthusiastic, or is it sharp and dismissive? Pay attention to the pitch, pace, and volume. They can give you clues about someone's emotions. For instance, a fast-paced, high-pitched response might indicate excitement or nervousness. A flat or monotone voice could signal disengagement or even frustration. So when someone speaks, don't just focus on their words. Ask yourself, what's the tone telling me? Is it aligned with their message or does it feel off? Listening this way helps you pick up on the unspoken emotions behind their words. So why does understanding nonverbal cues matter? It will allow you to respond with empathy and insight. Imagine being in a meeting and noticing that a colleague who's actually confident seems withdrawn. Instead of ignoring it, you check in with them later. Like maybe you can ask, hey, I noticed you were a bit quieter today. Is everything okay? That simple act can build trust and connection. And on the flip side, if you're aware of nonverbal resistance, you can adapt your approach in real time, preventing misunderstandings or conflicts before they even escalate. Now that we've learned how to read the emotions behind the silence, let's move on to the final and maybe the trickiest part of emotional intelligence, managing interpersonal conflicts with empathy. Because let's face it, conflicts happen. It is inevitable. And no matter how great your team is, disagreements will always happen. But here's the thing. How you handle these moments can either build trust and collaboration or damage relationships. This is where emotional intelligence truly shines. So we do have actionable tools for managing interpersonal conflicts, and I'd like to share it with you. So I do have here 4 in my list. So we can start first with empathy. When a conflict arises, pause and ask yourself, what might this person be feeling right now? Empathy doesn't mean you agree with them. It means you're willing to understand their perspective. A simple acknowledgement like, I can see this is really important to you. It can immediately de-escalate the tension. Second is use the STAR framework. This is one of my favorite and I do really apply this. This is my go-to for handling conflict. So STAR, S-T-A-R, stands for S is stop, pause, and take a deep breath before reacting. This helps you avoid saying something you will regret. T, think. Reflect on the emotions at play. both yours and theirs. What's really driving the conflict? A is act. Respond thoughtfully. Use I in your statements to express how you feel. Like, I feel overwhelmed when, or I feel like I've done something wrong because, or I feel challenged. Instead of blaming or accusing somebody for making you feel this and that. R is reflect. After the conversation, think about what worked and what didn't. And this helps you improve for the next time. So, third actionable tool that can help you manage conflict is focus on solutions and not blame. In the middle of a conflict, it's easy to get stuck in the who's right, who's wrong cycle. This is usual in every workplace, but that rarely solves anything, and that's the truth. Shift the focus to finding solutions. How can we move forward from here? Or what can we do? Or what can we both do to make this better? These questions show you're invested in resolving the issue and not just proving a point. Four, this is I think one of the most important thing when it comes to conflict. Know when to take a break. Sometimes the best thing you can do is step away. If emotions are running too high, it's okay to say, can we or let's just revisit this later when we're both in a better space to talk. Taking a break isn't giving up. It's giving the situation the space it needs so you can find a better resolution. Managing conflict isn't just about, resolving the issue. It's actually about preserving the relationship. When you handle conflict with empathy and emotional intelligence, you create an environment where people feel heard and respected. Imagine what that could do for your team, like more trust, better collaboration, and fewer lingering frustrations. Emotional intelligence isn't just a skill, it's the way to build stronger connections, even in tough moments. I'll leave you with this. Conflict is inevitable, but it doesn't have to be destructive. The next time you find yourself in a disagreement, take a moment to pause, listen, and lead with empathy. You will be amazed at how much smoother those conversations can go. So, just like what I have said in the intro, emotional intelligence isn't something you're born with, it's something you grow one interaction at a time. Think about it like this. Emotional intelligence is like a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it gets. But if you only practice it during big, stressful situations, you're missing out on opportunities to build that muscle in your day-to-day interactions. So how do we make emotional intelligence part of our daily work life? I do have few actionable tools for integrating emotional intelligence daily. So start with self-awareness. Self-awareness is the foundation of emotional intelligence. It's not easy, and we can talk more about this on the future episodes. Every day, take a moment to check in with yourself. How am I feeling right now? How might that affect the way I interact with others? For example, if you're feeling stressed, acknowledge it. You might say to yourself, okay, I'm feeling overwhelmed today. I'd make sure I don't project that onto my team today. Second, practice empathy in small interactions. Empathy isn't just for big conflicts. It's something you can practice in the smallest moments, like when a colleague seems distracted during a meeting. Instead of jumping to conclusions, try checking in like, hey, you seem a little off today. Is everything okay with you? Making it a habit to ask open-ended questions during conversations. This shows you're genuinely interested in understanding others and not just, getting to the next agenda item. Third is be mindful of your own nonverbal cues. Remember, emotional intelligence isn't just about what you say, it's also about what you show. So your tone, posture, and facial expressions send messages even when you're not speaking. For example, during meetings, make an effort to maintain open body language. Lean in when someone is speaking, make eye contact, and avoid multitasking. These small actions show you're present and engaged. Fourth is create a culture of feedback. Emotional intelligence thrives in environments where feedback is welcomed and valued. Make it a daily practice to give and receive feedback in a constructive way. So, when giving feedback, focus on behaviors and not personalities. For example, you can say, I noticed the report was submitted late. Can we talk about what happened? Or can we talk about your challenges? Instead of saying, you're always late with reports. You could see the difference, right? Next is journaling for emotional clarity. Journaling might sound old school, but it's a great way to build self-awareness. Spend 5 minutes at the end of your day jotting down your emotions and how they influenced your decisions. You can use questions like, what was the most emotionally challenging moment today and how did I handle it, or what would I do differently next time? So why make emotional intelligence a daily practice? Because the little moments add up. When you approach your work life with emotional intelligence every day, you build stronger relationships, you reduce misunderstandings, and you create a more positive environment, not just for yourself, but for everyone around you. It's not about being perfect. It's about being intentional, and that consistency pays off in ways you can't imagine. So, to bring it all together, as I mentioned, emotional intelligence isn't about being perfect. It's about being intentional. It's about showing up with empathy, self-awareness, and a willingness to connect every single day. The tools we've talked about today are here to guide you, and not just through challenging moments, but also through the everyday interactions that make up your work life. Thank you so much for tuning in to the episode of Life Lemons and Lemonades. If you found this episode helpful, please don't forget to share it with a friend or colleague who might enjoy learning about emotional intelligence as much as you did. And as always, keep going, keep growing, and I'll see you in the next episode.